Rice is an increasingly important crop in Nigeria. It is relatively easy to produce and is grown for sale and also for home consumption. But there are lots of reasons why rice is the choice crop for farmers who are looking to make it big every year as the rainy season sets in. On Business Nigeria today, our discussion focuses on how Nigeria can boost its rice production. Welcome, I am Yemisi Lanredo. But first off in the news, the National Bureau of Statistics says inflation in the country declined by 0.02% in April. According to the NBS, the inflation rate put at 17.24% declined a little further from 17.26% recorded in March. Well, this represents the third consecutive month of a decline in the headline inflation, indicating some easing in prices. But between March and April, the headline index increased by 1.60% in April, 0.12% points lower than the rate recorded in March. Meanwhile, food inflation accelerated to 19.30% year-on-year. Now we gather that the dry season harvest are currently underway across the country and favorable results had been recorded in most areas. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Tolulope Ogunjobi, who is currently in the market taking a survey of prices of goods in several markets in Lagos. Well, Tolu joins me on phone. Hello, Tolu.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Let me see.
Exactly. Looking at the headline inflation, we'll see just a marginal decline in April as against March. But for the headline, for the food inflation, there's been an upsurge. What are you getting in the market?
Indeed, I agree with you that the rate is the difference is really marginal. Talking about 0.02%, and that's talking about the inflation generally, and the upsurge which we have in the food prices and the food price index. But what we have here indeed is that most of the prices of foodstuffs are still on the high side. They remain on the high side. And it's really worrisome. The bag of rice here still stays at 18,000 naira for 50 kilograms. 25 kilogram bag of rice is about 9,500 naira. Beans stays at 23,000, and the other type of beans is 22,000. And the marketers which we spoke to, the traders we spoke to, many of them are saying the same thing, that there is a little bit of mix-up, that a little bit of drop at some parts and a little bit of a hike on some parts. Like for yam, it's on the high side. You know, for yam, for rice, for staple foods, they are still on the high side. You know, for what we've gathered today. Two markets visited, the K2 market and also the Aladi New market, which we are now, where there's a lot of sales going on for food stuff.
Okay.
Right here in Ikeja.
Okay, Tolu, let's talk about rice. Now, the increase in this price or the drop in some of the prices of rice, is it about the imported rice or the local rice?
Yeah, exactly. You know, the government has made ascribed this development to saying that rice production in Nigeria is on the very high side. You know, very expensive. Saying that, even the farmers, the interest rate is still on the high side, even following the anchored borrowers and all of that schemes introduced by the Apex Bank, that's the Central Bank of Nigeria. You know, saying that if you look at other countries like Vietnam, India, and Thailand, the interest rates are so low, and even rice production is highly subsidized in these countries by foreign governments. This is not being done here in this country, you know. And how many rice mills do we have? Active ones. So these are real issues that need to be sorted out. And until the government looks into the policy trust of rice production, I don't see price of rice coming down so easily.
All right, Tolu, we'll be discussing that further in the program. Thanks for the update, Tolu, right, in the market there, taking a survey of the prices of food in the market. Well, agricultural sector in Nigeria is most time ignored, particularly rice farming. And that's as a result of the tediousness involved in production, hence the concentration on importation. Rice is the most consumed food, not just in Nigeria, but the world over. And because rice is one of the most imported food into the country, the demand outweighs the supply. The federal government is concerned about the high cost of local rice in the country, which is now above the price of imported rice. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Audu Ogbe, gives reasons why imported rice is still cheaper than locally produced rice despite government efforts, and one of the major reasons is that most of the imported rice is subsidized by the foreign government. But the government is working hard to flood the country with locally produced rice and crash the price. Well, Thailand, which used to be the largest exporter of the staple food to Nigeria, and about 7 leading rice factories in Thailand now have closed down as a result of the current ban on rice importation into the country. All right, let's discuss this further. And agro and young professionals for agricultural development, Olawale Ojo, joins me in the studio. Many thanks for your time, Olawale.
Thank you very
yes,
much.
you must have heard. Let's begin with the inflation. And of course, we heard from our reporter on phone there talking about the price of food, still, especially rice, still on the high side. What's your impression?
For me, like your reporter mentioned, one of the critical points that has resulted in the increase in prices of rice as a commodity is still the high cost of production for the farmers who produce the crop. Most of them are smallholders. There are not so many commercial farms produce rice, and for those who even do it, they do it at a very high cost, which makes it imperative that by the time they're able to sell out into the market, the prices have to go up to be able to break even or make profits.
Yes, that takes me to the optimism shared by Vice President Oshibajo recently. It said Nigeria will become self-sufficient in rice production next year. How achievable is that?
It is achievable if they have the willpower to push the policies they have put in place. A lot of policies are in place to drive agriculture, to drive rice production, as it were, but they need to be the willpower to make this policy work. They also need to tweak some of the policies to be able to be favorable to the realities on the ground for our farmers. If they're able to achieve this, then we could be able to move up production and also be able to reduce prices that the consumers will be able to buy the commodity.
Let's talk further now. Aside the willpower, which you have said, and of course the policies that need to be readjusted, what other ways can be done to boost rice production in Nigeria? Or what other means do we have to boost rice production? I know a lot has been voted or projected into the agricultural sector now because of the diversification process or diversification we're talking about away from oil. What other things do the government or does the government have to do to boost rice production?
I think the government needs to stick to their responsibilities, which is to make the policies, enforce the policies, regulate them, provide an enabling environment, and let the private sector drive the process. And this involves the fact that they need to enable the private sector to be able to provide quality input. They need to look at how we can have more equipment and machineries come into the farms. We also need to relax a bit on the land tenure systems for farmers, because some farmers, they want to farm more rice, but they have very constrained land portion to be able to do this. The private sector needs to drive the process. The government just needs to provide the guidance, the enabling environment, the infrastructure that is needed for them to be able to succeed.
Why do you think the government, need I say the government has failed over time when they have actually been part of rice production? Because you are actually advocating that the government leaves it to the private sector. But what if the government takes part in the production?
For me, I think the government needs to focus on governance. That is their job.
Because I feel they have the technical power, they have the technical, everything needed to actually carry out this large-scale production.
Okay, let me give you an example. Let's take the relationship between our farmers and the Agri Development programs, which is the ADP. They are supposed to provide some level of support to the farmers to ensure that they're able to increase productivity, to be able to do things properly. But it's clear that we have, first of all, a shortfall in the number of extension agents. Secondly, they are not well funded, so they are unable to properly do their jobs. So now we have farmers who are out there who are just at their own will, able to produce what they are able to produce with the knowledge that they have. Whereas if the government had funded the ADPs, then all the researches that had been produced by our research institutes would be able to go down to the farmers to teach them better ways to farm rice, to teach them better ways they can link the markets, and also be able to increase productivity, which will definitely drop the prices. However, we're having the government, say for example, the Anchor Bora program, get involved in the value chain, but instead of subsidizing what needs to be subsidized, they go subsidize the prices of rice. And this affects other growers who are not in the program. So the government, yes, there's the right policies, but we need to implement them properly in a way that shows that we are taking it as a business, not as a developmental project. Because when you go making the farmers believe that it's a developmental project, they go ahead to think that, oh, this is my share of the government's money. They don't do the things as a business. But when they know that, yes, the government is only providing us with these subsidies to ensure that we succeed in our businesses, then they'll take it seriously. They'll do their part. There'll be a mind change, and they'll be able to drive the efforts they need to put into their farming systems to be able to increase productivity, which will also be beneficial to them. They're able to send their children to school, they're able to have more income rather than what they do right now, that most of them are running at a loss.
Okay, let's go down the nitty-gritty of the challenges faced by rice farmers in Nigeria. And you've mentioned some, the issue of the policies, the issue of having no land, not enough land to actually grow some of these things, especially because we know rice takes a whole large plantation to be able to grow rice. Now, what are the major problems faced by even the small farmers you're talking about?
Okay, so for example, we have the issue of water. Water is very fundamental to rice farming. Now, most of our farmers depend on rain. Up north, a few of them have the privilege to have irrigation, but when we start moving down to the south, most of them depend on rain. So when a farmer in the north, for example, is able to grow rice 2-3 times in a year, somebody down south can only do it once because it depends on the rain. So let's imagine that he had dams, he had irrigation systems, which are infrastructures that the government would have been able to provide, then he could be able to produce rice 2-3 times in a year. Secondly, storage. So a farmer grows rice and he has no choice than to sell as soon as he harvests because there is nowhere to store them. And which means that in every cycle, we just have to deplete whatever has been produced. We also have the issue of extension support that I had mentioned earlier. Farmers, especially those who are in the rural area, and even for new ones that are coming, need to be kept abreast on new technologies, new methods that they are supposed to use to be able to increase productivity. It's not just about saying, I have the land. A farmer with 1 hectare who does it properly could produce more rice than someone with 2 hectares who doesn't do it properly. So it's about knowing what technologies to use, what practices to use that would help them to produce more. So that is also a challenge. They do not have this support, this advisory support extension service they are supposed to have. Another issue that is also very important to mention is quality input. We have seen farmers go buy for seeds, and when they get to their farms, half of it is shafts, not seeds. We also have farmers that have bought fertilizers and they get back to their farms and they meet stones and all sorts of things in the bags of fertilizers. So we need to also reshape and revamp our agro-dealership programs in the country to ensure that agro-dealers are not only educated to inform the farmers properly, but they have shops that have quality products. Lastly, I would like to mention the issue of equipment and machines. Rice farming is labor intensive, and the cost of labor, where you're able to find it, is expensive. The farmer has to plant, he has to transplant, he has to apply fertilizer, he has to spray, he has to control weed, and then he has to harvest, he has to thresh the rice. All these processes,
a lot of things involved, a lot of challenges.
Yeah, so Wale, these are challenges that the farmers face.
You have named them all, from water, storage, extension support, and all that. But after the break, you've had experiences, and I know that there is no how we cannot say the government has not had an input in some of those things. But does it trickle down to those who need them? We'll talk about that with your experience, but that will be after the break. Please stay with us on Business Nigeria. You're watching Business Nigeria. We've been talking rice production in Nigeria and how it can be boosted. I've been speaking with an agropreneur and young professionals for agriculture development, Olawale Ojo. Yes, Olawale, just before I went on that break, you were talking about the challenges that farmers in Nigeria face, from water, equipment, extension support, quality input. I know it's no news that the government has actually budgeted a lot for agriculture in Nigeria. We know different programs. You've mentioned some here. We've heard of Fadama and all that. But so far, what have you heard about such programs in Nigeria? Has it trickled down to those who actually need these funds that the government has pushed into that sector?
I'll be frank with you here. It's been a mix of good news and bad news. So you go to some environments and you hear the good news from the farmers. They have benefited from the programs. They've been able to increase productivity. And then you go to some other environments and you hear, oh, the money was given to political farmers. The money did not get to us. But by and large, for me, it also boils down to the fact that even our farmers need to begin to pay more attention to the way they do things. We cannot do it the old ways anymore. They need to make sure they stand up, they get up from their farms, they get abreast of what information is available to them, what interventions is available to them, make proper use of them. Because we have also had some farmers who got funding, produced the rice, went out to sell out to somebody else apart from what they agreed. So in as much as we know that the government needs to do more, the farmers too also need to be sincere in ensuring that if you get funds for these, use it for that purpose. If you have to return some money that has been given to you for farming, make sure you return it, because that's the only way we can ensure sustainability and continuation of this program.
I'm actually happy you talked about not doing it the old way anymore, and I know that a lot of development has gone into agriculture all over the world, especially in the western part of the world, and that's talking about a particular development, that's agritech, the mixture of agriculture with technology. And of course, these issues that we have in Nigeria is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. For example, in the California Salinas, we have the issue of minority women not taking part so much in agriculture. And agritech has been able to help a lot of entrepreneurs. Talking about, when you talk about quality input, the seeds, the right seeds for right production. Now, how aware our farmers, our rice producers, talking about rice production now, how aware are they about this kind of technology in Nigeria?
So if we look at the dynamics of farmers in Nigeria right now, I would like to categorize them into like 3 segments. We have the smallholders who are usually in the rural environment. We have those who are emerging farmers. These are young people who are beginning to pick interest into agriculture, or people who have worked in other sectors, made some money, and now coming back into agriculture to say, let me see what I can do. We also have those who are commercial farms, who have the money, who have the infrastructure to do the business of farming. Now, amongst the emerging and the commercial farms, yes, they are beginning to use technology because they have access to the internet, they have access to better information and equipment and technologies to do things better. But among the smallholder, a lot of work still needs to be done because there are even some communities that they do not have electricity, they do not have good roads. So how does a farmer in that kind of environment even have the internet? Because when we talk about the use of technology, it goes as little as, say, for example, a farmer is able to see a video of a process he can implement in his farm. Or is able to have a drone that can go around his farm to send away the birds, instead of having to put somebody there at 4 o'clock every evening to sing songs so that the birds go away from his rice farm. Or it goes as far as being able to know that when he picks up the product from an agro dealer, he can check on his phone to be sure that this product is original. Or mobile money. But some of the challenges right now in Nigeria is the fact that we have so many people who are trying to do things for agriculture, but are in the technology space. They do not really understand the realities of what happens in agriculture. So they go ahead and develop the solutions, but by the time they come to market, it's not fit for the farmers.
Okay, so very briefly now, in your assessment, is the government looking in this direction? With all you have said, is the government looking in this direction to actually develop the true development that we need in agriculture in Nigeria?
Yes, partly within their means, within their knowledge. For example, the GES scheme, which is also supposed to continue, farmers are already being registered right now. So in a couple of months
there's
or
actually
weeks,
a step in that direction.
They're already being registered. Biometrics, I actually got registered, so I know it's a process that's going on, and you get a card to show that you are registered. And so in the next weeks or months, we hope its implementation comes through. People are going to get SMSs to show where they can pick up their input for what crop they have said they are farming.
All right.
So they are doing the little they can. But of course, like I said, the private sector needs to drive the process.
Agropreneur Olawale Ojo, thank you for your time on Business Nigeria. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Nigeria's agriculture sector is faced with many challenges that threaten food security. But technology experts say genetic modification remains one of the biggest solutions to this setback.
Nigeria is well endowed with vast natural and human resources for agriculture. The country is one of the world's largest producers of crops like cassava, cowpea and yams, but cannot feed its huge population and remains a major importer of food. Challenges facing its farming output have yet to be fully addressed, and food insecurity persists. Biotechnologists now advise that the country fully embraces their intervention for the sector's growth.
When farmers are starved of the crops they want, they will do anything to get it. That was what happened in the case of Brazil, and the Brazilian government had to go out of its way to put in place the same steps we are putting in place now, so that we do not bring this thing in illegally. Farmers want to make money.
The bulk of Nigeria's rural population is involved in farming. These subsistence farmers lack the capacity to adequately expand their operations, and infrastructure decay hasn't helped either.
Crude oil prices are still not stable at international market as dealers in West Texas set to undermine OPEC and Russia deal to boost prices. At the London market, the Brent crude trades at $51 per barrel. For the OPEC basket brand, price ticks up to $49 a barrel. Energy analysts say extension of output cuts may not be enough to rebalance the global crude market. And that's Business Nigeria. Thanks for watching. I am Yemisi Lanre Ido. I leave you with the figures of the exchange rate as it stands at the moment.